The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is data discovery, and our guest speaker today is Soumendra Mohanty. He is a Vice President with Mindtree. Soumendra Mohanty is Vice President heading DAS practices of Mindtree. He has more than 10 years of experience working on large business integration programs for several Fortune 500 companies. His experience includes application management, strategy development, technology planning, business and technical systems design, development and implementation, and business processes re-engineering. He has extensive experience in managing large systems integration programs and transforming, mobilizing large outsourcing engagements in the business intelligence and data warehousing space. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Soumendra.
Thank you. So good afternoon and good morning for those of you who have logged in from outside India. What we're going to talk through today is something very interesting from a transformational way of looking at data and doing analysis of it. Historically, we have been doing data analysis in many different ways. But the advent of multitude of data, different kind of data coming in, and also the amount of time we have been spending doing data analysis being challenged by the business users is actually pushing us to a very different way of looking at data and analytics as an activity. Second aspect of it is when you look at a particular data and analysis area, what do you really mean by it? So we're going to cover through in the next half an hour, 45 minutes, many different aspects of it. And secondly, I'm going to bring out a demo and show you how the changes are happening in the data analysis area. Now, interestingly, the topic is data discovery, and also, if you read the byline around that, it is detect the expected while discover the unexpected. Now, these are two different paradigms that defines what we mean by data and analysis per se. If you look at, there are different forces which are influencing the way we have looked at data. And over the last 10 years probably, we have stayed in this area of doing data analysis, applying statistical models, designing and developing a lot of reports and dashboards and whatnot. But all of that is changing. As you see in the slide before you, and it says the changing physics of data and analysis for a number of reasons. One is across the layers of traditional BI, self-service BI, real-time BI, complex event processing, and finally data discovery. If you put together the four dimensions of what exactly are we doing in this area, one is the data freshness. What means is the currency of data, the latency involved with the data, how fresh it is or how old it is, and to what extent you can go back in terms of historical and timeliness. Then you look around, what is the analysis approach that we are putting in, or rather what's the methodology that we apply to do this analysis. Then time to decision is you're looking at this data, analyzing it for a particular purpose. And this is where, when you draw the insight, how does it reflect the time to decision? And finally, the interaction with the data itself, which means what are the different things I can do with it? Now, if you look at traditional BI, and those of my friends who have been doing a lot of data warehousing, data integration kind of work, it is always like, data loaded yesterday night and today morning I see and I get the data, what I do with it. Yeah? And hence the data freshness is as of yesterday. The analysis approach we apply there is kind of known questions. In a way, when you start building a data warehouse and start designing the reports and dashboards, you actually know what kind of data I'm bringing in. You also know what kind of KPIs or metrics or drill downs and navigational aspects of it, filters I want to apply. All those things you already know beforehand, and accordingly you design it. And this is why I say it is always about the known questions you have in mind. Those reflect in your functional designs. Those reflect in your technical designs and whatever reporting tool you use, and you build those things. And the ultimate intent is that detect the expected, in a sense, the KPIs you design for should show up, right? Whether it is number of policy counts that has been issued yesterday, number of claims that I received till yesterday, or if it is a banking situation, then how many transactions have happened. If it is a retail scenario, how my store performance is and what I'm selling, what I'm not selling, all those things. But those are the questions already planted out, right? That is how you have designed it. The time to decision, which means I've got the data, I've got these known questions, and I'm going to look at these reports, when it comes out, it's pretty much scheduled, right? Every day morning you come in and you see these 100 reports. The interactiveness with the data is, that defines what it looks like, and that is where the reports comes in, with the nice dials and gauzes and, point and click and all that stuff. And that is traditional BI. Then you look at a self-service BI, and most of you must be wondering, this is a very interesting aspect which has come out very recently. Like 3-4 years back, this whole thing about self-service BI, which means, the IT team doesn't produce reports anymore. It is the business users who will actually access the data and build their own stuff. Okay? But even for those situations, the questions are known. It is probably you have introduced a little bit interesting aspect of what if simulations into the reports or scenarios, introduce more drill downs, more filters, but always it falls under the ad hoc analysis area, and that's why the reason, the naming is self-service BI. You look into the next layer, which is real-time BI, and this is where it is all about how much closer I can get to the events that is generating this data. A sell happened, or a event happened, whether it's insurance or banking or anything, how much closer I come to the real event when it generated the data. And still then, you are also looking for alerts and trendings around what are those events and how they're behaving, and it is still a set of known questions. The time to decision there is probably much narrower, and hence it is milliseconds to minutes. And interaction with the data is pretty much rule-based and automated. You do not have too much to play around that, with the reports or the alerts that is coming out. Complex event processing is another area where we do a lot of data analysis, and it is near real time. It is embedded into the processes itself, the business applications that being monitored or used, mostly used in case of fraud detections, our capital market scenarios of stock trading and those, plants and machineries where you build in based on how the machinery is behaving, you collect data from their real time, and you have built alerts and thresholds around it. and it shows out the results, right? That is where the time to decision is again milliseconds to minutes. The interactiveness with the data at that layer is more around algorithmic driven. So the formulas drive, look into patterns, and then it provides an alert or a trending embedded into the processes that I talked about earlier. The last one is the most happening thing or talked about thing today. And data discovery is the area where it doesn't matter what is the freshness of data, because the purpose of analysis and the intent there is very different. There you are going after unknown questions, meaning I really don't know what I'm going after, but I've got all this data, I've got some of these things in my mind, and how do I quickly go through the process of finding something out of that data? And like I said, the time to decision there is probably from hours to days. But the ability to quickly assimilate data of different kinds, of different nature, different details, and follow the train of thought. The tools that have come out today to support this kind of activity are very rich in visualization, and we will see a demo towards the end of this session. And there's a lot about the storytelling that needs to happen. Now, you can also relate this to a popular term and a role that is coming out and everybody's talking about is called data scientist. And this is where what happens is follow a train of thought, go and find out what data is applicable for the area that you're analyzing, figure out what trends, what connectedness is there within the data, and then visually show what is happening with the data. All of this put together is considered as data discovery as an area. While this is kind of the changing physics of data analysis, let me take you to a little bit back into the history of how we really analyze the data, because it is important to understand why data discovery. Right? What we have been doing earlier was also some kind of a discovery in one way or other, but what are the factors that has changed and what is influencing us to look into data discovery in a very different way? Is the timeliness or time to decision the most important thing that is influencing, or it is about the level of data, the level of insight that you can deep dive to, the way you are going to show the stories around what the data is telling? What are those things that is kind of pushing us to a very different way of looking at data and analyzing the data? In this particular slide, as you see in front of you, on the left is a typical methodology of how do you analyze the data. Starting from some questions in mind, gathering the relevant data for that, structuring the data. The data may not be in the same level of detail or organized in a way to put together your different analysis patterns to that, explore the data within it, and then finally, whatever you have found, communicate it back. Maybe the question itself needs to be refined again, and that is how the circle completes. If that is the kind of process and approach normally we have followed for analyzing the data, on the right you see there is a data and info 2.0. It's a perspective of a methodology, again, in the context of data to wisdom or data to insight, if you term it that way. And you see it has some kind of a relevance over there with some kind of example coming out, which is at a raw level of data you find how many e-books were sold last month, right? From there you find what kind of meanings out there. So what is the market percentage we are capturing in that area? Then you look around and say, fine, I understood how many we sold, what is the market capture we have. Do we do more segmentation around it? That who are the guys who are the biggest consumers at a particular store of these kind of books, right? So you're drawing more insight from there, and then finally you are applying that knowledge to a strategy, saying, we approach and sell Barnes and Noble these books based on these kind of patterns that we see within the data, right? Then you look at the bottom right where it's a context around the complexity of data that you need to do this kind of analysis, from raw data, statistical reporting, historical way of just organizing the counts, if you may, and from there how do you go into interactive ad hoc analysis and furthermore into statistical modeling, forecasting, and all that area. So while the complexity of data and the methodology you will apply increases as you go from one layer to the other layer, you also see the business values coming out of it. Now, a typical question will be, okay, I understood that we sold 65,000 plus books, last month, but what does it really tell me? Right? So first thing is how many books we are selling. Fine, I came to know about that, but what is the next? So like that, if you progress on the insights that you are deriving from this kind of analysis at every step, you see the business value that you are delivering is also increasing. And that is what it talks about in the bottom right diagram. On the bottom left, you see the progression starting from summary reports, which is what has happened, to ad hoc reports, which means there are different activities, different information you are gathering, if they are paired or compared, what is going to happen. From a query drill down, what exactly is the problem? You're doing much more depth analysis. Alerts is fine, I understood all of these, what I need to do, or there are things that I'm not meeting, could be sales target, could be marketing conversion ratios, etc. And then the upper layer is much more into further value-driven aspects, which is modelings and predictive analytics and optimization. So we have been doing all of these from a methodologies or approaches, and there are different approaches for different kind of data analysis work that you will do. Having said that, the perspective will be also to understand why data discovery. And we have been talking about it. So the point that I'm trying to raise here is you have to understand it in a very different context. Now, the pictures here are probably going to explain what I mean by that. On the left, you see a big or a small. Now, whether it's a big data, not actually terminating it into a bigger data, but explaining, the data could be big, data could be large, data could be different things put together, and hence it's a very complex structure or a complex business problem you're trying to solve. Or it could be very small in a sense. Now, flip it around and say, my questions could be very big in terms of there are different type of questions I want to ask to this data, and each question leads to another question. On the far right is your objective of pinpointing what exactly you're trying to find out. But in the middle, you will find interesting way of looking at it. I know what I know, which means this data has got this kind of context associated, and I'm asking this kind of question. So basically, I know exactly what I'm going after. But then there could be another set of area which is, I really don't know, what is out there, and that is something around what if scenarios, some kind of analysis which is a little bit combining different kind of data sets and having maybe different questions asked to it. But the larger part of it, which is what you see in the middle, is I really don't know what I don't know, and that is what I want to find out, or follow a train of thought and go about analyzing the data. That is precisely what we are talking about in data discovery. Now you can ask me a question, all this is fine, I'm doing BI or a lot of this reporting, a lot of these other things that we do today, how it is different from what you're talking about in a data discovery perspective. And this is where, let's look at a comparative view. talking about is you ask the questions to the data, no particular order of questions or known questions. It is thoughts leading to more questions. You review the results, what it is throwing out, and you review it visually because visual way of inferencing the outcomes is much more suitable for us as human beings than to anybody else. And then you go back and refine the questions again. Now, if you look at the traditional BI aspects, you ask questions to the data, which means develop a bunch of reports, send it back to the guys who have asked for those kind of questions, and they want to review what is coming out. Those guys are never happy. All of us in the BI world, we know that no requirement is frozen, and there is always the end consumer of the report saying, well, this is good, but I was looking for something else, right? That's a classic scenario we always get into. So once you create a bunch of report and you send it back to the consumer for review, they come back with more questions, and you again go back to the drawing board, look at your data model, look at your semantic designs, look at your report designs, and then start producing more reports. That is what is the traditional BI all about. So the difference between a data discovery and a traditional BI aspect is much more iterative, much more interactive in a sense, where you should be prepared to discard your insights that you have got from the data because it may make a sense or may not make a sense, and you should be prepared to throw away your work, go and do it once again, right? Follow a different angle of asking questions, etc. So if this is how it is so different, the question could be coming to the mind that is there a methodology or is there a different approach we need to follow? And one quick thing will be you meditate, yeah, and figure out that what is coming to your mind, and then take that approach, which is for people like us, working in services industry, and there is a client which is chasing down our neck. We can't say that I'm meditating to find out the answer for the question that you have raised, and hence to apply a methodology to that. On the right, you see a flow, a typical flow of data discovery. It starts with, I have the I don't know feeling, which means there is too much data all around me. I've got a bunch of reports which just tells me what has happened yesterday. I want to find out more correlations between events. I want to find out what are the different patterns within the data. Are there something that I'm missing out? And hence I have this I don't know feeling. So what I do next, I acquire. And acquire in a sense will be data. Acquire will be talking to people and getting some responses from them. And this happens a lot in the initial design phases. Then, talk to people who have the domain knowledge, which is basically the experience in that particular industry or a particular field in which you're trying to solve a problem. If you get all of those, you acquire those, you start analyzing and interpreting that data. And as you start interpreting that data, you will start thinking about, how do I, learn through inference and deductions? Yeah. What are the different things I'm uncovering from here? Finally, you end up in a position that I've exhausted all possibilities, and is it enough, yes or no? If it is yes, then you know a lot more now from the same data beyond the static reports, presenting what has happened in the past, and you get a feeling of, I know now. If you don't get that feeling, then obviously you have to go back to the drawing board and say, am I applying the right approach? Am I applying the right logic, the right reasoning behind this data? If the answer is no, you go back and you acquire more data, more experience, more responses. And you continue with that cycle. So if you see at the bottom, it says, you have to have a kind of a wandering mindset, which is, there is no predefined notion about the data or analysis pattern. So you have to be very open and flexible in your mindset. Then you have to have the affinity to seek, which means asking more questions, asking more references, acquiring more and different kind of data sets. You then take those into the discover mode, which is trying to put together different things and seeing whether it makes any sense or not. And finally, you are going to arrive at a situation where you have understood what this gives me. This is a reference way of looking at, is there a methodology? And you can define your own methodologies as well. There are many different approaches also people use to do it. Now, having said this, let me take you through to a particular scenario that we are going to talk through, and show a demo, like what exactly and how do you do this discovery as a process, right? And solving a particular business problem. All right. So what we are going to do is primarily look at an industry situation, and I have chosen the industry as insurance industry, where when you look at what kind of things happen as a process-wise and different perspectives of the data, you would see these are the kind of questions you keep asking, right? Which is basically the KPIs or the known set of questions that you have in mind. Which means, what is my loss ratio? What are the line of businesses purchased by client? What is the cost to service, or location propensity for CAT claims by client type? These are the typical questions that you already know and you are asking to the data, and this is where you design the reports and the dashboards and then all that stuff. But we are talking about a discovery scenario which is beyond these known questions. So let me go to the demo aspect real quick. Yeah. Now, what you are going to see here is a typical dashboard that you design for a insurance industry's business intelligence platform or a deliverable perspective. Now, remember, just a minute or so back, I talked about what are the different KPIs, what are the different known questions you already have in mind. And this particular view that you see in front of you has got a lot of those questions already inbuilt into the dashboard, right? So it says there's a way of organizing policies by channel, right? So how many are broker driven versus how many are direct, which means people directly going to the websites and buying insurance policies. You have another split of that data, which is policies by gender, which means how many male, how many female people who have bought my policies. In the bottom, some of these gauges you will see, it tells you what is the year-to-date sales value versus budgeted value. Then on the right, you see a claims perspective which talks about top 5 recent claims, what are the volumes of claims that you have received and how much you have paid back. In the gauges at the top, it gives you a perspective of the comparison between the 2 years, 2008 versus 2007, and this is something that you will design by known questions and sit with the business users and the key buyers of from the client side, and you come out with this kind of review, which is fine, and we need this thing to run our business. Then I'll take you to another aspect of the same insurance industry data, which is it says what is my overall claim rate? This could be a very valid business question. And by products, right? In the below you see by products, life plan, fleet secure, travelers. Who are the guys who have bought these kind of policies from me, and then the claims they have put in. Then you go to the policies, and you will see another aspect of the same set of known questions being asked to the same set of data. And this is where we are saying the policy is registered against the products. And you see the count, right, which is life plan, this much, and then fleet secure and all that. Then you see who are the salespersons who are, selling these kind of products. Then you go and say, I want to know average premium by product. And the chart below shows you what is the average premium by product. But these are the things that you already know from a questions perspective. Now let's go to claims analysis and say, if claims is my area of discovery, then I want to know more about what kind of things are happening within the claims. Are there patterns? Are there some trends that I'm not getting out of the static reports? So your discovery steps start from here. You say, what are the claims by month? Yeah, and as you see, the volumes coming out. Then you see what are the policies, and then what are the claim dates, transaction types, what are the different amounts that is coming out from there. Then you take another view into that, saying, if I break it down by age band, just from your customers, who are the guys who are putting in a large amount of claims for you, right? Okay, so this shows some interesting aspects. I see a 10 to 20, between 10 to 20, I see quite a large number of things happening here. Then I kind of see an increasing trend from 50 to 60 all the way till 90 to 100. What's happening? Quite obvious. People living more than 100 years is a rarity nowadays, and hence it's a very small number, but that is okay. That's understandable. Then you come to the right and say the way to understand this chart will be claims volumes by policy and claims paid. That means by policy, how many claims I have received and actually how much I have paid. And you see quite a good number of them fitting into the normal scenarios here, but there are some which are outliers. So here is a policy number. It has submitted around 67 claims, and the total value for that claim is coming to 470,000 pounds. Wow, right? That is something really big happening there. And then you go and see what is happening here. Another claim, 19 claims around that in that particular policy, and then the value is some 323,000 pounds. So, this kind of a analysis and a visual way of looking at it immediately throws out all the outliers, which could be a matter of interest to you and to go and investigate and find out what's going on in these policies. Who are the people involved, and is there a fraud or is there something? I don't know. So let me go and find out. Yeah. While we are doing all of these things, the other way of looking at it will be, let me follow my train of thought. So let's go to this particular chart here. What it does is it tells you for the same claim data, right, what is happening in a visually intuitive way of leading your thought process and then making it more inquisitive. Now, if you look at it, what we have done, we have taken all the claims data, we have started looking at, so what is the channel, right? Is it direct or is it coming through the broker, which is up here? I see 81.4% coming from the direct channel, right? Which is good, which is what the industry trend is. The insurance companies are heavily leveraging the online channels to sell insurance and thereby saving cost and then all that from a physical setup and all those aspects. And 64.5% of the policies that I'm selling is going to the males, and mostly you see the married guys are taking those policies, and then you see a distinct pattern developing, right? One of it is boiling down to most of the claims that I see and policies I have sold is around life plan. Okay, that is interesting, right? So direct channel, male as well as female, mostly married folks, they're all taking the life plan. Okay, good. But then I see the claims as they have put in, these policies have got a different way of looking at the premium split. You see that the premium split, which is annually, that means once in a year you pay my premium, half yearly, monthly, quarterly, right, as you scroll down. So this is how the premiums I collect. But I realized that compared to the annually paid premiums, which is 38.4% of my population, the monthly guys are more. They're 53.8%, right? And understand the data context for this is claims. So the other way of looking at it will be policies that I have sold through direct channel to married people and life plan has been getting more claims coming from the premiums which are monthly paid versus premiums that are coming from an annually paid. Now, this kind of a pattern you never saw originating out of all those known questions and static reports and dashboards and all. Yeah. Now let me also do one thing. Let's say, okay, fine, I found out something here. Now, if I apply the age intervals to this, who are the group of people falling in the particular age range are giving me this kind of a data representation? So I just added age range into this, and let's see what it tells me. Yeah, there's a lot of data crunching happening, so that's why it takes some time. And what you see here across the same dimensions now, which is the channel, the customer gender, the marital status, the product, and the payment mode or frequency. Now I have added age intervals into the mix. And then I see another interesting pattern developing, right? Which is, I see a lot of these guys, which is between 80 to 90, 25.7% are contributing to this pattern. I go to further down, 70 to 80 age range is contributing to this pattern. Then I look at 60 to 70, I see a 22.2% contribution to these factors. Whereas all others are probably pretty less, and hence they don't show a very distinct patterns to me. Now, this is what is called data discovery. And you start looking into this, and then you start applying more and more criteria. So I will take out age intervals. You're back into where you are, and then I will say, let me take out the channel, and let me add a perspective around what is the line of business aspect of it, right? And now you see the line of business, commercial line, I do not see a distinct pattern. Health, I do not see a distinct pattern, although one breakaway group is happening here. Again, coming as male, married, one particular breakaway group here which says health, expat, saver kind of a policy, and annually paying, this may be contributing something, right? Similarly, you can go back and say, well, there is a female perspective coming in, but single, right? And here you see how it is leading you into the same kind of analysis impacting your claims volumes. So what I just did in front of you, having the ability to choose the different ways of looking at data from different angles, asking different kind of questions, visually seeing what it tells you, till you arrive at a conclusion with a very distinct way of telling the storyline. That is all about data discovery. And if we go back to the same perspective of what I was talking in the beginning, which is there are things that you will design as a known set of questions, known set of data, and at the end the report shows you what you had expected, right? Which is basically detect the expected. Whereas on a discovery kind of a process and approach, you're looking at the same set of data, but you do not have any predefined set of questions, and hence you're going to play around with the data in many different angles, many different ways to arrive at a conclusion. There are tools which are coming up. I just showed you this particular data discovery demo on a tool called ClickView. And similarly, there are other tools in the market. You have got Tableau, you have got Visual Insights, SAP is coming out with Lumira, all trying to provide this kind of a functionality above and beyond the standard BI set of functionalities. So that is how the industry is moving towards. The other interesting fact around this is a tool not for the masses, in a sense that you do not do data discovery kind of offerings for people on the shop floor who have to look at static data in terms of reports and all. This is designed for business users, knowledge workers, or data scientists, data analysts, those kind of profiles, those kind of roles that you have. And the key buyers of this kind of offerings are the business users directly, because nowhere during my presentation and the demo, I'm talking about any technology. I'm not talking about how many universes you are going to build for this, if you are following a SAP Bob J kind of a platform, or what is the model that supports a Cognos set of reports or a MicroStrategy set of reports and all that. We're not talking about any of those technology languages here. And directly you are analyzing the business and a business language. And that is why this is becoming a hot cake for all the business users. We see there's a disruption happening to the BI vendor stack as well, and they're more and more trying to integrate these kind of functionalities into their standard BI product offerings. That's all I have to cover in terms of what is data discovery, how it is so different, show you a visual way of analyzing and living through the data discovery as a process. And I would open up for questions now, if there are any questions.
Thanks for the insightful presentation, Samindra. Let's quickly take up the questions now. As you have just mentioned, I request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your insights. Are you able to get the questions in your questions panel?
Yes. I've got a question around, again, the tool, which is ClickView, which I use for this demo. And there is a in-memory concept which comes in with the tool, and which is, to me, one of the key things that is required for data discovery kind of approach or the activity. So the question is more around if I've got a 50 GB of data, for example, and I'm using ClickView to do data discovery, which is an in-memory technology. Does that mean that my own desktop or system or a development environment need to be reconfigured or should have this kind of a repercussions around that? I think the answer is yes. Many of these tools will have to have a high-end in-memory functionality and configuration kind of a adherence that you need to do. In fact, the demo that I showed, if I add on few more parameters which has got a large amount of categories involved, given I'm running with a 4 GB RAM machine, it will crash. So hence you need to always go back, look at what kind of data, what is the level of drill downs within the data, different kind of categorizations within the data, take all that into account and then look into the configurations aspect. The other question is, are there any open source tools available for data discovery? I would say the answer is yes, but have they come to the level of maturity of what you just saw here? The answer would be no. I think there are a couple of open source tools that are coming out for helping in the data discovery process and approach. IBM has got one interesting aspect into that, which is called pleasing eyes or something like that. Then there's a crowdsourcing aspect of it coming through D3JS, which is a famous, most popular open source, I would say, around data visualization, where you can put together a lot of data and have some of these very interesting visualizations that will help you to go through the data and find out insights. But again, I'll go back to my earlier point that many of these tools on the open source side are still complex. You have to do a lot of coding, and you have to organize the data in a very different context, different way. But the visualizations will help you achieve those. One of the questions that came out is how the machine learning and data discovery can be used to detect customer behavior patterns, segmentations and whatnot. Yeah. Now that's a very good question because there are always this perspective around by data discovery, are we actually also doing machine learning, right? Which is basically predictive analytics to a larger extent. The answer is clearly no. If you look at machine learning and predictive analytics as an approach to draw insights from the data, it follows a very different pattern, yeah? Which is where you have to analyze the data, you have to know what is my target variable that I'm going after, what is my contributing attributes that define what algorithm that I need to choose. So it is a very different perspective. But in comparison, when you look at the data discovery area, here it is a very wide open field. You just have data, and you organize the data, look at it visually, and it should tell some stories, right? Is it behind the scenes? Is it applying a regression model, or is it applying a k-means clustering, or is it applying a decision tree? The answer is clearly no. This is where the human aspect of bringing in the business context behind data comes in for a discovery, as opposed to a scientific way of statistically modeling the data, which is very different, comes into the play for I would say the machine learning area. So that is the difference there. But some aspects like a clustering or a very crude way of segmenting Can you achieve during discovery? The answer could be yes. There is another question around if using standard BI tools, if we create such dashboards and those aspects in a pivoting concept, etc., will it kind of match the parallel coordinates plot, dashboard that I just showed? I think there are different ways to look at it. One, parallel plot is just one representation I showed of data discovery, and it is my favorite because I find it complex, but it also puts all the data crunched together in one place, gives you a visual way of connectedness within the data, and quickly you can draw insights from there. There are different approaches for achieving the same. Could be a sunburst, could be sequencing diagrams, and there are many other different approaches you can apply. Coming back to your question that can I do the same thing using standard BI offerings? Well, the answer is yes, but probably you have to design 100 such reports stacked up against each other, and provided you already know what analysis path you are taking. And the moment I say if you know your analysis path you are taking, then it becomes a known set of questions and it defeats the whole purpose of discovery. So, that's the way I would put it. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Soumendra, questions are pouring in. Are you able to see them?
Okay. Yes, I'm able to see the question. So there are a few more just got added, which is good. Thank you guys for asking more questions. That helps me also immensely to explain the thought process behind this. So there's one question around. Are these tools using artificial intelligence concepts like unsupervised learning, etc.? I think from an algorithms perspective, probably they must be using few of these aspects. Yeah, but I think the key of this thing is you do a discovery. If it doesn't, you don't like it, you throw it away. Which means you have to have a lot of things done in memory, and that is the advantage, right? So this particular tool I demoed you, it runs largely in memory, because if you fire some of these kind of queries on huge volumes of data, it does a round trip, and then by the time it comes back, you probably had a cup of tea. And that is something that people don't like, right? I'm following my train of thought, and hence I should be quick and fast, and then it should be really easy to comprehend. So I think the key here is in memory. The key here is visually intuitive way of linking data together. To do that, behind the scene, are they using some kind of a unsupervised learning? Probably the answer is yes. There's another question coming out, will this kind of tool support non-relational database like a MongoDB or a Cassandra or a Neo4j, GraphDB and all that stuff? The answer is clearly yes. To a larger extent, some of these tools have got very standardized and robust APIs built to look into any kind of data and then apply this kind of discovery methodologies on top of it. Can I integrate QuickView as a .NET developing add-ins on Excel and then those things? I would say the answer is yes to a larger extent. Can you embed these kind of discovery approaches into different platforms? The answer is yes. and different tools will have different configurations, do's and don'ts that you need to go and learn. But in general, the answer should be yes. There's one more question around where data processing will happen for this kind of analytical interpretation. And this is exactly what I'm trying to explain. A large amount of the processing happens in memory. So it is actually the entire data, depending on what kind of analysis you're doing and where you are proceeding in your path of analysis, what is the data that is fitting into those kind of areas. All of those are periodically brought to in-memory, and hence you get the flexibility of choosing anything and quickly doing a visual analytics, right? But then, like I said earlier, you need to, beef up your, in-memory capacities and the RAM sizes and then all of that. There's a question around, could you please throw some light on how data discovery can lead to identifying the next best action for a particular situation? I think this is a very interesting question, and thank you for that. I personally have seen many implementations where data discovery is used as a way of finding that, what are the linked things for the next best action. Meaning, if I am able to find some of these interesting trends within the data, and I have got a rule base already designed for if this fits this kind of a pattern, here is what the next best action or recommendation should be. That is how a lot of implementations are happening right now. But these are two different aspects, right? One is visually analyze, find the pattern, spot something, and then link it back to your next best action strategy. There's another question around, can any experienced programmer learn this data discovery, or is it more recommended for DBAs? My friend, I have stopped doing coding probably a long time back, right? And I'm not a programmer anymore, or nor I'm a DBA anymore. I'll probably screw up many things if you give me that kind of a role. But what you just saw I did the demo is something I developed within 2 weeks. So you have to have, if I go back to the methodology, you have to understand what is the data talking about, how the data is organized, what kind of thoughts you have in mind, but most importantly, you have to understand the business context behind the data, because if you don't have that, then no amount of data will make any sense to you. The rest, everything is using the tool to help you do that analysis. Learning the tool is easy. You don't have to have a programming knowledge. But yes, you need to understand the context behind the data. In short, you have to have the domain knowledge to a certain extent.
Due to time constraints? Yes. I was just mentioning that due to time constraint, I have to request you to take the unanswered questions offline, which I will share with you through email. So if you would like to take one last question and then sum up the session, we can close the session for today.
Excellent. Yes, let me do that. The last question is around how data discovery is embedded in big data analytics, right? Very apt question. The reason for that is, if you look at big data, it is voluminous data, it is moving data, it is different kind of data coming together. Now, if you have to analyze billions of records to find a spot or a trend within that, how would you do that with traditional reporting tools? It is really, really cumbersome. Secondly, what you're trying to go after to find out from the data and get some meaning, context associated, etc. You may not get it in the first try or first attempt, So you should have the flexibility to play around with this kind of a big data scenario multiple times till you arrive at a particular conclusion. For that, you cannot go back and keep redesigning your reports and dashboards and dials and then all that. It's going to take a long, long time. So these tools and technologies, mostly on the visual analytics, data discovery type of tools, and the techniques that you apply there, is, in my view, very, very suitable, very apt for a big data analysis kind of a scenario. Without that, we will actually struggle to even tell a story of big data analytics, right? So, thank you. I think, very, very interesting set of questions. I sincerely hope this session has created some spark in your mind and some inquisitiveness about this very emerging area of analyzing the data. And data scientists, there are not many. Similarly, the tools are very new in the market. One thing you ask me, that what is it from a career, from an opportunity, and from a staying focused perspective I can advise all of you, I would say data discovery, visual analytics is something that is, you need to really, really focus on. Because this solves business problems. This is something very close to business users, and from a skill and technology perspective, this is the most niche thing that is happening as we talk now. So I think you will learn more in this area. It is much more exciting in the coming years. With that, I will close the session today and hand it back to you.
And I'm really thankful to our guest speaker for conducting this wonderful webinar today. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for the support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Soumendra, for taking the time out and having us on the webinar TechGig. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you, guys.